All right, I think we'll have a few more people joining. So as everyone is coming in, I'll just go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for your attendance. This is our last session of our first day of 365 Ninja Live, and I just wanted to make a couple kind of housekeeping comments before I turn it over to our speaker today. We'll do a Q&A session, time permitting, at the end of this presentation. So for those of you who are in the audience here, you can actually open up your questions area of your GoToWebinar toolbar on the right-hand side, and you can enter questions as we go. I'll be keeping an eye on those questions, and what we can get to at the end, I'll facilitate kind of a question and answer period. And feel free to enter them early and often or save it till the end, whichever you wish. I also wanted to mention that, like I said, this is our first day of a 6-webinar series. So we have 3 more great sessions tomorrow. You can still sign up at live.365ninja.com. And even if you can't attend, I would encourage you to go ahead and register because you'll get early access to the recordings. We'll be sending out emails with recording links after the presentation, probably tomorrow, maybe today. We'll see how that goes. So thanks again, and it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Bil Martin, who's with us today from Infrascience. He has many years of experience with consulting firms, providing services for Fortune 100 companies in all aspects of the technical solution cycle. So we're lucky to have him. He has experience architecting, I should say, cloud solutions, as well as on-premises and in hybrid environments, and just a few areas of experience he has that I'll list out here. Design, implementation, high-level project management of solutions involving cloud, Hyper-V, system management, system consolidation, mobile device directory integration, and desktop deployment. So lots of great stuff. And like I said, we're lucky to have him, so I will turn it over to Bil, and we'll get started.
Thank you, Rachel. I hope everyone's having a good day today. As Rachel said, I've been doing IT and consulting for far more years, and I think I've done just about a little of everything in that time frame. What we're going to talk about today is empowering your Office 365 business, allowing access to your users for the various different pieces. Many times people think Office 365 is email and email only. But it's much more than that. It's actually got, of course, Office 365 email, as well as it's got SharePoint Online and OneDrive and Skype. So there's Delve, many different components of it. So all of the access features and the things that we're talking about today can be applied to pretty much any of the features of Office 365 you want. We do have questions in there. If you question board, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to ask. I'll be glad to answer all the questions that you have coming up. That said, let me go ahead and jump in because we have a limited time and I want to make sure we cover everything. Had a little trouble getting the slide presentation to move there. So today what we're going to cover is I'm going to start off with a bit of a PowerPoint presentation. I promise not too large. I think it's just about 9 slides. I try to keep it slow, and then I'm going to jump into a demo and kind of walk through a few things because that's what people typically want to see, but I want to kind of give some background information on there. So the pieces we're going to focus on today is Business Anywhere, being able to provide your users the capability of working on whatever devices they have, whether they be corporate or their own devices, BYOD, and from whatever location, be in the corporate office, be in the hotel room or their home office or wherever the case may be. Often these days, coffee shops. The scenarios we're going to be focusing on is enabling secure access, making sure that we're using proper security and identity in order to access the corporate data, as well as managing those mobile devices and the applications that are pushed on it. We want to make sure we talk about protecting your shared data. You know, these days, data espionage is massive all over the place, and we want to make sure that the data does not get in the wrong hands. And then, we'll also mention a little bit on enabling global access to your business resources, the back-end servers. And we'll kind of wrap it up with the products that are going to enable this, and then the little thing on the next steps. And the next steps will be basically jumping into a demo as well. So the 4 different components that we have is enabling secure access. As I said, that really is, we're talking using identity and your Azure Active Directory. It could be tied into your current on-premise Active Directory, and making sure that the right people have access to the data that they need to and the applications they need to. How we're going to be able to control and why we need to control the applications that are put on the devices, and why we need to have protections on there. Some good reasons as to different ways that we can protect your data, and as I mentioned, shared access. So the first slide we're going to jump into is, on this piece, is using your identity piece. We want to be able to have security, but we also want to be able to have ease of use. Users are going to find a way to bypass security if you don't make it easy on them. So we wanted to make sure that we can enable single sign-on. So once they log on to their device once, they're not being prompted to enter the credentials for every single piece that they're accessing. If they're trying to access email, trying to access SharePoint, or perchance trying to access an application on your corporate environment, or maybe even a federated one. We want to talk a little bit about enabling multiple different levels of authentication. Not only do we want to be able to enable your username and password, but we also want to talk about multi-factor authentication. And during the demo, we're going to show you a little bit on that. We'll be using a mobile phone in this specific instance to go ahead and provide the second level of access. You can either do that with a phone call, a text, or an application that you actually install on the mobile device. And it even supports some of the older things like the Secure ID, the physical cards that are out there as well. And we also want to be able to reduce the level of support required by your help desk. We're going to walk through during the demo self-service password reset. One of the #1 calls is still today users calling opening help desk tickets for, I forgot my password, can you reset it for me, please? So we're going to walk through a self-service password reset that shows that the user will be able to go ahead and enable that themselves or change their password themselves. And the next component is actually managing the device. We want to make sure that we manage the applications that are on there, and not only the applications, but the data that goes with those applications. So, for example, I have Microsoft Outlook installed on my iPhone, and somebody sends me an attachment on there. Maybe that attachment is a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet or something, and I open that document up. I want to be able to take that data that's in that document or spreadsheet and copy it perchance into, if I'm going from Word, copied into an Excel spreadsheet. Both of those being managed applications. On the other hand, since it's company data and we want to make sure it's secure, I may want to block being able to copy that data out to another application that's on the phone or on your tablet. So if it's not a managed application, we can block access to cut and paste, copy and paste. Another thing that we can also prevent is save. So we can say they will not be able to save the document or save the attachment unless they're saving it to a managed application. So for example, we're pushing down OneDrive, and that's a managed application, so we can allow saving it there. But on the other hand, if they're trying to save it to a local storage on the phone or on their tablet, we can prevent that. Along with that, we want to make sure that we have a consistent level of rules and policies across devices. Consistent in the sense of being of a company typically has multiple different groups, but if you have, for example, at a hospital, the nursing staff, you typically want all of the nursing staff to have the same policies, but they may not be the same policies as the C-level folks in the organization. So we can control those policies for different groups, but at the same time allow consistent policies across. And those policies can be something as simple as forcing a pin down to the device, or possibly, turning off the camera capabilities, different things like that on the application, on the device. We can also create conditional access to things such as your Office 365 email and SharePoint Online to state that users cannot actually access that data unless their device is managed. And then we also want to make sure that in the event that device gets lost, stolen, or even in the fact that a user goes off and buys the latest and greatest iPhone, we want to make sure that we can wipe the data out. But on the other hand, we don't want to do a full wipe on that device because, then we wipe off grandma's pictures and people get a little upset at that. So we're going to do a selective wipe or a corporate wipe of that data. And so we need to protect that data. So I talked a little bit about protecting the data on the device inside the managed applications. But what happens if that file is copied outside of your organization or even internally in your organization gets to another group of who has it? We want to be able to assign permissions to that file. I'm sure you're probably aware if you've got a file and it's on a file share and you have NTFS permissions, you can limit who has access to that. But what happens if that file gets taken out of that directory? Those NTFS permissions disappear and all of a sudden they can be copied and put anywhere else. But what we can do is we can assign permissions to that file that restrict what can happen with that. And those permissions actually get assigned to the file, so wherever it goes, those permissions stay with it. If somebody emails it to somebody and they copy it to a thumb drive, then permissions are still preventing them from being able to do anything other than what we've explicitly given them. Common things that are done is making the file read-only, who can edit it, who cannot, who can print it, who can save it. So we have controls to that. And we'll walk through that a little bit in our demo as well. So the products that enable doing these components are Azure Active Directory Premium is the tool that we're going to use for the identity. So that's going to give us the not only the authentication, but as well as also going to give us the self-service password reset. It's also going to give us the multi-factor authentication. And so any identity or any security controls are coming from Azure Active Directory Premium. The tool that we will be using in order to be able to manage the devices and push applications and control policies on that is Microsoft Intune. And then the product we'll be using to assign protection to the files, and as I said, the files, whether they're in an email or whether they're located on a SharePoint share or a file server out there, that's going to be the Azure Rights Management Service. And some of you may be familiar with rights management that's built into the Windows Server. It is very similar to that, but it is a little bit differently, and there's a easy migration path from one to the other. So these products are all included in the Microsoft EMS suite. Microsoft has this priced pretty well as far as making it a good idea to buy the suite. Last I looked, and I'm not a licensing guy, so don't quote me on this, but the retail price, and if you have an EA agreement, you may be able to get a discount on it, for the EMS suite was $875. But if you purchase an individual component, such as, for example, Azure Active Directory Premium, that's $6. So if you only need one component out of the suite, then it's okay to buy it separately. If you need two, then it's probably a good idea to go ahead and buy the suite and take advantage of getting all that. The other component that's not listed on here is recently Advanced Threat Analytics, which added to the suite. I'm really not covering that in this today, as it's not really related to Office 365, but it is related to monitoring your domain controllers and checking for and looking for threats into your domain. So, for example, if I sign in my house at Woodstock, Georgia, and then it notices that AD notices that I sign in from Timbuktu, 5 minutes later, it knows that's physically impossible and it will flag something. It also can monitor things such as if it knows I've accessed, server A, B, and C, and then all of a sudden it sees me accessing server Z, it's going to raise a flag for that as well. So let me go ahead and jump into the demo, but your next steps that you may want to consider to do this is setting up a proof of concept for the EMS suite, doing an analysis of what your business needs are. At Infrascience, we can definitely assist you with these tasks. And I don't think I mentioned at the beginning of this, I am working for Infrascience. We are a consulting firm that focuses in Microsoft infrastructure, pretty much everything in there. So that said, let me go ahead and jump into the demo. Give me a minute as I switch screens. Okay. So the first thing I want to show you is, I mentioned conditional access. So one of the things that we commonly get asked by many of our customers is, how do I prevent my users from connecting into their mobile device, connecting into Office 365? If they know their username and password, then they're going to be able to go ahead and create a profile on their device, whether they're using Outlook or the built-in app. So bear with me a second. I'm going to share a phone. Where'd it go? Why is it moving over? Well, I'm trying to share my phone screen with you, but it is not sharing for some reason.
I see it trying to peek at us.
Yeah, but it's not moving over. It's stopping. There it goes.
There we go.
Okay. So, as I said, one of the most common things users will do when they get a new device is they'll go off and they'll create an email profile. So I just went off and I got this brand new i4, yes, the latest and greatest technology I know, and I configured my email profile. So I open up my email and I want to go read on my email. But I've set conditional access on controlling this. Says you cannot open or access your email or SharePoint unless you agree to have your phone be managed. So all they'll see is this one email. And this email here is basically giving them the information that they need to agree to allow this device to be enrolled. And at that point, there's a link on here that says get started. And from here, what it's going to do is it's going to go off and you're going to need to register the device. But actually, since we're kind of limited on time here, I'm going to go ahead and not register that device just so we can do this. But what it'll do is you'll go walk through enrolling the device into Intune and then get the policies from the Intune that we've set for the devices for the user. And at that point, it will allow them to access all of their email. If for some day they decide that they're going to blow away that profile, suddenly they will no longer have access to their email again. So that keeps you from having your users access your email from their PCs at home or their tablets or whatever, and make sure that they're only being accessed on the devices you want. And then I wanted to kind of jump into Intune for a minute. We talked about setting that conditional access. Let me re-authenticate here. Evidently, I can't type. And shortly, I'm sure it will come back at me. At least we hope it will. Gotta love demos. I really would like to show you Intune. Hopefully we'll get there. Okay, it looks like it's coming up now. So we talked about setting conditional access. When we set conditional access, you have to first create a compliance policy. And the compliance policy, it can be something as simple as we just have to have a PIN on the device or something a little bit more complex. So let me go ahead and show you real quick. I'm kind of cautious to the time here. But if I click on policies, compliance policy, and I should have one pop up here. And this one, all I did was very, very simple, was I just created a PIN force on the device. But I just want to show you some of the other things that you can put on here. You can force a PIN, and what type of, is an easy PIN? Is it, single digits, how many digits, alphanumeric or just numeric? You can require a password. You can set an inactivity time as well as password expiration. you can also force encryption on the device as well. You can detect whether the device is jailbroken or not, and if it's jailbroken, you can prevent access from coming on. And then you can force whether it has to be managed by an email profile. In other words, if you click that and the user had created their own email profile on the device, it would no longer allow access. They would have to use a profile that's being pushed down from Intune. So the next piece I kind of wanted to run through, well, conditional access was just over here. You set that and click on it and enable it. But that's pretty simple there. There's not a whole lot of settings there. The one piece that I want to point out on this is you can be specific as to which platforms you want to point it to, and it is controlled by AD security groups. So you don't have to necessarily deploy conditional access to all your users. You can have it to a subset of users, or you can kind of do a little bit of the reverse, as you can start with a larger range, but then come down and exempt certain groups from that. So if you have it set to all users, and yet you want to exempt maybe your C-level people, then you can go ahead and do that. But one of the other things that I talked about setting up was managed applications. So you'll see if you come over here and looking at the apps, you'll see I actually have a couple of apps in here. One is a Kindle, and it's an app package from the iOS store. So all I did here was just create a link for people to be able to go off and download an application from there. We can do that from the iOS store or Google Play Store or along those lines. You can also deploy applications that either you've created or applications that you've purchased from somebody else. And then you also have an option of deploying what we call a managed application. And you'll see out here I have Outlook, and that's a managed application. And that when we talk about a managed application, that means that there's a policy assigned to that application. And that's where we control what is being done to as far as copying it. So here you'll see I have a policy for the managed application. This is software. And this is, are we going to restrict that it's going to be used only in a web browser? Where's the data going to live? Are we going to allow cloud support or not? And as you see here, we also have a limit where we can set what we can do with cut and paste. Are we going to allow policy managed applications or any applications? And the same thing for getting data from those applications. We can force corporate credentials if we want to on that. I honestly have not seen too many customers do that. It's a little extra secure, but once again, we're talking about getting the right end user experience as well. Okay, so I'm going to move in really fast here into a couple other things. What I wanted to show is going into, make sure I have my phone ready, multi-factor authentication. So if I go into one of the Office 365, in this case I'm going to enter the Access Store. And you know what, let me go ahead and do this in a private window so I can use a different logon. Safety in private browsing. And okay, where did it start that at? All right then. Okay, so I'll go ahead and log off just because it's easier because I can't get that other one to come up for me right now. So one thing I also want to point out is you can customize your web page, your landing page. So for example, your users are going to go ahead and log in here, and I'm going to make sure that we're going to go to the Access panel. But you want to make sure that your users know where they're logging into. So as soon as the user enters a user account from your domain, it will recognize that it is in your domain, and it'll go to your landing page. Cannot type today. Let's go back and try that again. This is really something I can't type. All right, why isn't that working? The file is there. It should be working. Sorry guys, love demos. They don't always work the way they're supposed to. Why isn't this working? I'm going to see if I can do the self-service password reset. But it's not finding the account, so it's probably not going to work. All right, what's going wrong here?
We got a suggestion from the audience to try another browser, but I'm also noticing after iDrop there's a comma instead of a period.
Thanks, that would definitely make a difference. I did try to use another browser, but I couldn't get it to come up with a display.
Yeah. Well, a live demo of a password reset is it's another helpful thing.
Well, that's...
And don't worry about time. We still have a good amount of time left to cover the rest of what you have to show and our questions.
Okay, let's try it over here now. Okay, I'm not sure what happened to my Bob account. Let's see if we can try another one that doesn't have multi-factor authentication.
Oh, okay. I was gonna, and it's not one of those two accounts.
Okay, guys, I promise I did test this right before the test. So.
No problem. We can move on to the next one.
Yep. Okay.
And feel free if there is anything that you can kind of verbally explain or talk through, you are welcome to do that.
So I'll go ahead and explain through it because I don't know what happened to the demo, guys. Well, what I'm trying to show here is that we can use multi-factor authentication, and when I'm trying to log on the account, and for some reason the accounts aren't working today with this particular moment, what it will do at that point is it'll come up on the screen, you enter your username and credentials, and it will wait at that point until it goes in whatever multi-factor authentication you've chosen. For example, if you had a text, it will send the text to your mobile device. There'll basically be a 6-digit PIN, and then you come back and you'll enter that PIN back on the web page, and it'll allow you through. If you do a phone, it'll basically make a phone call, and you hit, with the pound sign, and then it'll let you in. At that point, you'll be able to go in there. What I was also trying to show you with the application page was it's basically a landing page for any applications. Once again, to try to make the end user experience better, is just one simple spot to see all their applications. So for example, your Office 365 link will be there. You can also add applications that you're federated with, or maybe you've already set up using ADFS to federate with, such as maybe Salesforce or Box or something along those lines. You can add the applications inside of Azure to go ahead and which ones are going to show up there. Let's see if I can get back to that screen. Walk through there. If you come into here and click on Applications, then click on Add, we can add an application from the gallery. And you see all these different categories that they have. These are all applications that Microsoft already has agreements with, federation agreements with these different vendors of these different applications. So you can set up and configure effectively single sign-on with that. Whether it's you have federated with the application and it can just pass through and use your AD credentials, or if it's an application that has its own authentication, you can enter the credentials once and it stores them, so every time the user goes back to access that application, they're able to do so. So it just makes it once again a little bit easier for the users to be able to go ahead and see that. And I apologize for the multi-factor not working. So the last piece that I really wanted to cover on that was the Azure RMS. And so for what I'm going to use for an example here is here I have an Outlook application, and I wanted to be able to send an email to one of my coworkers or maybe somebody outside the company and assign protections on that application, or on that attachment, I mean. So I just go here and click New, and then choose a person, RMS test, and then I'm just going to go ahead and attach a file. We'll keep it simple here. At that point, I've added what they call an RMS sharing application. I installed that onto the machine. It's available for Windows, Android, iOS, so you can put it on anyone. That allows you to easily attach RMS template or protection template to the files, whether it be in an email, or you can also get it from Windows Explorer to be able to attach either file protection to individual files or whole folders. So if I click on this application or click on the Share Protected, it'll come up and identify that the file is out there and then give me the templates that I have set up, what permissions are going to be out there. For this one, I'm going to go ahead and set all permissions. No, I'm going to make a view and read only. And then I have options here. I can make that document expire. So for example, I'm sending it outside my company, and one of my partners or one of my vendors, maybe I'm sending a quote to them, but I don't want them to be able to see that past a week, so I can put an expiration date on that. If they try to open the attachment after that date, they'll basically be refused. They'll see the attachment there, but they can't do anything with that. I can also set up to email me when someone opens the document, as well as to allow me to instantly go and retract the permissions on that document. So as I said, the nice thing about this is these protections that are being set are actually applied to the file itself. So even if I send this to somebody outside my company and they go and try to forward the email to somebody else, yeah, they can forward the email, but the other person won't be able to get it. As you see in here, we see different things of notifications. So this is one where I sent one to Bob, and I get a notification back that Bob opened that document for me. The fact that I'm not able to log into Bob's O at this present moment, I don't know why. I can't really show you Bob getting that document and opening and looking at the protection. But what you can see in that point is when Bob gets that email, he'll see the document, he'll see that it has protections attached to it, and he can even click on that protections and see what level of protections he has. If you allow him to, he can also go and request additional permissions. It'll come back to Sue, since she's the one that granted permissions, and say, hey, you said I could only be a reviewer, but I really need to edit this document. Can you change the permissions on the document? So that is, in a nutshell, what I wanted to cover. So does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, so we've gotten some great questions here in GoToWebinar, and since we were just talking about this rights management, let's look at those ones first.
Sure.
So we got a question, can I remove RMS protection from a document? And I think you might have covered that a little bit, but let's just reiterate just in case.
The person that has assigned permissions to that can remove protection from the document. It also can be done via a super admin. If you haven't, you can identify a person or a group to be a super admin in RMS, and they will also be able to do so.
Got it. Great. And then does the recipient need to have a Microsoft account to be able to open that RMS attachment?
So if you're sending it to somebody outside of your organization, there's two ways it can handle depending on who they are and what they are. If they're a company that already has a Azure RD ID, so for example, if they're already using Azure or Office 365 and Microsoft knows about them, it'll automatically detect that and let them go ahead and use that. If they're somebody that does not, or the Microsoft does not recognize, what they'll see is there'll be a link in the email that says they need to sign in first. And when they sign in first, it'll basically go off and create a RMS account for them, and at that point they'll be able to open attachments that have been assigned permissions to them. So no, they do not. That they'll create one.
Great.
And
you know,
that's slightly different from Windows Live account.
Yeah, that was a good question, and I was kind of wondering that myself. So still in the rights management world, we got a question, if I have IRM enabled on SharePoint Online or OneDrive for Business, do I still need to use the add-in in the Outlook client?
If you have it already enabled and you're pulling a file from SharePoint and that file is being protected via SharePoint, the IRM in SharePoint, that basically the RMS ties into that. So no, you do not need to go ahead and protect that, because as I said, once the permissions are assigned to the file, it stays with the file. So if you can go ahead and grab it from SharePoint and put it in an email, it still has those protections on it.
Great. So we do have a few more minutes, so we can cover a few more questions. And for those of you in the audience, feel free to add in questions to the question window. Let's see. So you covered this, I think, was a question that came in right before you actually covered it. But again, let's just kind of reiterate. In Intune, you can create different conditional access policies for different groups, right? So you said Azure or 80 security groups.
Conditional access can be applied to different groups, but you cannot really have different conditional access. There is conditional access for Exchange Online, Exchange on-premise, or SharePoint Online. Those are the pieces that are currently supported by Intune. That is probably going to be changing in the future, but that's where it is right now. And so you can set conditional access on any one of those and apply them to different AD security groups, but you can't have a specific thing stating that is a different conditional access rule for one group versus another.
Got it. Okay, interesting. We have another question on RMS files. I think this is related to the earlier question. So how do I unprotect RMS files if we want to just remove those protections? Well, but I think you kind of answered this. I'm not sure if there's another answer that they're looking for. Not really? Okay. All right, so can you select, sorry, I think I only have a part of this question. Let me go back and look real quick. Can you select a multi-factor authentication prompt based on private versus public? And I'm not sure if they're talking about the connection, but you might know, Bill. If private, do not prompt, and always prompt for public.
Okay, so I assume what they're asking there is if somebody is on the corporate network, can we not prompt them for multi-factor authentication? But if they're outside the corporate network, can we force that? And the answer to that is yes. We basically can put in IP subnets and say do not prompt, do not enable multi-factor if you're on the local network.
Right. Yeah, and we learned a little bit about that earlier today also in the identity management presentation. So that would be another good one to check out. So a question about rolling some of these solutions out to end users. I guess, what are the effects of implementing Enterprise Mobility Suite on end users, and do you have any recommendations for a smooth rollout or user training, things like that?
Sure. The effects, honestly, depend on which pieces you're trying to roll out.
Sure.
But no matter what you're trying to do, you probably want to do a phased approach. And, as I mentioned, pretty much all of this, whether it's using Intune or whether you're deploying multi-factor, it is all based on using AD security groups. And so it is recommended to roll out to different groups at a time. You may want to, start off with a small pilot group of, just your IT department, maybe move out to another 50 or 100 users, depending on the size of your organization. And as you, get going, kind of add additional groups as needed, depending on how big your help desk staff is, what all you're rolling out depends on how many you want to go ahead and do that. As far as giving training, we've typically seen most people or most companies use email communications with screenshot documentations. We try to keep it relatively simple, but most of the things such as enrolling devices is literally almost a click, click, click type scenario, so there's not a whole lot that the user has to do for something like that. Enabling self-service password reset, they have to, at that point, register for it. That you can literally force them to it once it's enabled. You can force them to go off the next time they access something in the cloud. They'll be forced to register for a self-service password. And what they'll be doing in most cases is they'll be prompted for questions. And you typically will say, okay, here's a bank of, say, 10 questions. They have to choose 5 of them, and when they're presented for the request, they have to get 3 of them right. But those numbers are flexible, and you can choose those. So this depends as to what you're rolling out, but definitely a phased approach and using documentation for training. I have had some customers that have used, either webinars or, training in person, but honestly, for most of these things, that's not required.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. People tend to be familiar with these types of things, I think, as end users. And so I think we have time for one last question I actually got via email. Is it possible for you to show the setup of RMS quickly one more time? And I think that probably is just on the email.
Set up on how to enable it inside your organization?
I believe so, yeah.
Honestly, that's relatively simple as far as enabling it. You can do it from a couple of different places. Let's see if I can get back to it. From your Azure Active Directory, literally click on Azure Rights Management. You see here it's active. I can, if I would go back, I could deactivate it. You see there's a button down here to deactivate it. And then I can also come in here and I can create new policy templates or manage the templates that I already have. So let's go ahead and just say manage. It's basically the same thing. There isn't a whole lot that you can do with this. As I mentioned, it's setting up who can read, who can forward, who can print, that kind of stuff on here. Here you see I've set permissions as to who can actually be, what rights they have. I put these guys as co-owners, which is why it should have worked. And then you can come in here and configure actually with us. I can put an expiration date on the content. And this is stuff that you can build in the rules. And then you saw from the Outlook, the sharing app, I can also add some of those custom pieces. Here I can also set access offline. How long can it be available offline? So for example, if the user does not connect into Azure AD, then they will no longer be able to access that. So there really isn't that much to go ahead and configure. If you want to tie in Azure, if you want to tie in RMS that's built into Office 365 to encrypt the email message, there's a couple of PowerShell commands that need to be run as well, but they're relatively simple to find and deploy. It's only about you basically need to use PowerShell, connect to your Office 365 with the right credentials, and then set, what geographic you're on. For this case, for example, this would be North America, and then enable it either for all users or specific groups of users. And that's
Right, that makes
pretty much
sense.
as simple as it is for setting up RMS.
Yeah, and I think, if the question was for looking at it on like the individual document or message level, that is a nice segue into me reminding everybody that I will make the recording available. So if there's any part that you missed, want to go back and review, I'll be sending out those links. And we will wrap it up there. So thank you so much, Bill, for providing such great information. And even with a couple of demo hiccups, I think it was really nice to see some of this stuff live and in action rather than just talking about it. So if there's any other questions, people can feel free to email me and reply to those webinar reminder emails, and I'll get back to you, and I can connect you with Bill if need be. So thanks again. And if you are interested in tomorrow's session, remember to sign up. You still have time. And thanks again to Bill.
Thank you, everybody, for your time.